we will start today's webinar. It's so great to see everyone coming in here today and being a part of today's session. Thank you for joining us and joining us from wherever you are today. Welcome. So today we are running the Community-Led Financing Investing in Your Own Backyard webinar. Today, we'll discuss investment cooperatives and how they can impact business retention and community economic development. We'll hear about how investing locally helped one community in BC save their local coffee shop, and how another community in rural Saskatchewan rallied community members to support local development. Before we go any further, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. Cooperatives First operates on Treaty 6 territory, which is home of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis nations. We acknowledge that this land was not ceded, but that the purpose of the treaties was to ensure the land would be shared. Indigenous peoples have been cooperating in these territories for thousands of years, and it is through cooperation that all of our communities will continue to thrive. I encourage you, from wherever you are joining us today, to acknowledge and be mindful of the land you are currently on and those who also call it home. For those of you who may not be familiar, Cooperatives First is a nonprofit-based organization in Saskatoon that supports entrepreneurs across Western Canada. Our organization is funded by Federated Cooperative Limited and the Cooperative Retailing System to raise awareness of cooperatives and support the creation of new cooperative businesses. My name is Ryley Hawkeswood, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for Cooperatives First. Working on the tech side and helping me with today's webinar is my colleague Jenna Pullet, our Manager of Engagement in British Columbia. We're also joined by two great guests today. We have Lindsay Alliban of the Gull Lake Development Cooperative and Wendy O'Connor of the Sooke Community Investment Cooperative, who'll be sharing more about their co-ops and the work they kind of do. So for today, a very brief agenda. We don't want to take too much of folks' time, so we're thinking no longer than an hour. But for today's agenda, we'll be doing an introduction on what investment co-ops are. We'll hear from our panelists. Following that, we'll do a Q&A session where folks can put their questions in the chat, and we will get to those questions and ask as many as we can within the time frame. And then we'll end it with closing remarks to finish off the session. So just to jump right in, a little bit about what investment co-ops are. What is an investment co-op? Well, one of the biggest challenges we've seen in our work with rural and Indigenous communities is access to flexible financing. Barriers to accessing capital hinders local economic development and entrepreneurship. This can lead to businesses closing, job losses, and service gaps, which affect a community's economic health. Across Canada, communities are overcoming these challenges by drawing on the resources their communities already have to build the financial tools that they need. So investment co-ops were first created in Eastern Canada as a tool to help community members pool funds and invest in local projects. Co-ops like FarmWorks or the Sangudo Opportunity Development Co-op allow ordinary people to invest their savings in businesses that create jobs and provide goods and services to the community. We've seen a growing interest in this idea throughout Western Canada as communities look for solutions to attract entrepreneurs, support succession planning, and invest in the services that they need. The idea behind an investment co-op is simple. Most of us already invest through our retirement savings into TFSAs or RRSPs. That money is doing good work. It's doing economic development somewhere else where we don't see the benefits. The people who create investment co-ops challenge this convention. Instead of investing all our money on the Toronto and New York stock exchanges, why not invest some money at home in our backyard? Through the sales of shares or loans, investment co-ops allow community members to create a locally managed pool of funds to support entrepreneurs and local economic development. That way, you can see the impact of your investments, you can shop at the businesses you support, and see those jobs that are needed get created. And if things go well and your team picks the right projects, you can also see a return on your investment in the form of dividends. Just like other cooperatives, every member or owner has that equal vote. Members can run for the board of directors, and they can also participate in the co-op's governance. Those who want to invest more can buy more shares and see a greater return on their investments as well. This model and this kind of investing offers communities some important benefits that I'm going to go over. First, one of the biggest important benefits of an investment co-op is its flexibility. An investment co-op can support entrepreneurs in a way that a conventional lender, like a bank, never will. An investment co-op can issue loans, but they can also invest in a business alongside an entrepreneur. They might buy and renovate property on Main Street and lease space to businesses, or they can buy a business outright to prevent losing a service. This flexibility allows the co-op's members to get creative with how they support economic development and be creative with where they invest their dollars. The second benefit is sharing in the risk and the rewards. Starting a new business or investing your money can seem scary, but pooling your investment dollars with 10, 20, or even 100 other community members mitigates the risk to any one individual and makes larger projects more achievable within the community. And if the businesses are successful, your investments do well and everyone benefits. A third benefit is that an investment co-op allows your communities to strategically support economic development. By bringing together businesses, investors, and community leaders, an investment co-op can be the tool to start discussions about what your community needs. Maybe you need more homes to house new workers that will help businesses grow, or maybe you need to revitalize Main Street to attract new service providers. When communities start an investment co-op, they can work together to plan for growth and follow through on projects with their own money. So with that overview of what an investment co-op is, let's hear from our panelists. Both of our guests help form investment co-ops to help ordinary community members like yourself and I invest in their own backyards. Joining us today is Lindsay Alliban of the Gull Lake Development Cooperative and Wendy O'Connor from the Sooke Community Investment Cooperative. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for also sharing a bit about your co-ops. In this case, we're going to ask each panelist to share a little bit about their co-op and some insights about what they went through to start their co-op. We'll then follow that with a Q&A session. I ask that you hold all your questions to the end or put them in the chat, and we will go over as many questions as we can. So without further ado, I will introduce Lindsay to share first, followed by Wendy.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryley. Does everyone hear me okay? So my name's Lindsay Alliban, and I'm really happy that Ryley asked me to join today. I'm new to the cooperatives world as well, but have witnessed and been part of cooperative memberships my whole life with living in rural Saskatchewan. So when I'm the economic development officer in Gull Lake, as well as a couple other communities in the southwest corner of Saskatchewan. And I have a real passion for revitalizing small communities and cheerleading them to become the best version of themselves. So what I was tasked with when I first moved to working in Gull Lake was everyone on the town council said, "Can you bring us in a hotel?" And sure, I would be happy to try and do that. So for years and years, I've been, working my butt off to get a hotel to move into this community. And with no luck, year after year after year, we started to rethink how we could bring in more accommodations to this community. And then as well as the years went on that I was working here, the town took back several buildings due to tax enforcement, which gave them a nice little collection of older heritage buildings in their downtown space. So I was tasked with also solving this problem. How can we either renovate these buildings or determine that the best option would be to tear them down and just have a lot? So as many of you, I'm sure, have environmental interests for the community as well, tearing down a building is quite expensive and does create a lot of waste. So we wanted to find different options. And so as we started down the journey of exploration of what we could do with these buildings or how we could get someone to buy them, we realized that just like the title of this webinar, we needed people to consider investing in their backyard. So we decided on one of our buildings, which is a historical building in Gull Lake in the downtown area. It's a beautiful 2-story brick building. And the way we discovered it is we decided to have a vacant building tour downtown Gull Lake because there were quite a few. And so we we talked to the owners, or we opened the ones that the town owned, and we let people go have a look and see what these buildings were like. And once being in this building, we noticed how amazing it was and how much potential it could have. It has beautiful old wooden windows, lots of nice like features like rounded walls and an interesting facade. So we really wanted to preserve some of that as well as restore a building downtown and provide more business space or accommodations, like I said earlier, in the community. So we, through research in collaboration between municipalities and local organizations, we realized that cooperatives was a really good option. And we have some really great examples of cooperatives in our region. We have a grain terminal that is a cooperative model, and we also have the usual pioneer co-op kind of model that exists across all of the prairie provinces, I'm sure. So we had someone in to speak about how cooperatives can work in joint investment projects, and then I got lucky and met up with some of the cooperatives first folks at a conference in Saskatoon. And how lucky was I, because they just took me by the hand and showed me the way. So we set up a couple webinars with them, and they have all the resources any group needs to set up a cooperative board, what being on the board means, what kind of paperwork you need, how to incorporate. So they were a huge resource and asset for us. They also had a really great business coaching offer. So we got set up with a business coach who helped us do a feasibility study on the building that we were interested in retrofitting. So we met with this business coach once or twice a month for about 4 months and just went through all of our ideas and all of the options that would work for what we're trying to set up. So we identified that we definitely need more retail or professional space in our community, and we also need more short-term accommodation. So the size of this building was perfect for that, and our coach went through lots of best case scenarios, best practices, and got us a financial plan and a feasibility study together that we can use to go to our community and say, hey, look, this is what we're interested in doing. Is anyone interested in being part of this? So that's what we did. And some of the challenges that we came about was, some people are just in the opinion, why wouldn't you just tear it down? It's old, it had rodents in it, it has no power, it has no heat. That could be the option, but if you can get in and plant a few seeds with people and show them the potential of what that could look like compared to just tearing it down and how much that costs, we started to gain some traction. So we had the municipal council involved because they owned the building. So that was one perk we had. And then we also had myself in that role to go out to the community and ask for what I did was I went out to like other entrepreneurs in the community and tried to, talk to them about the idea and the concept. And they went and talked to their friends talked to their friends, and eventually we had 6 or 8 people that were interested in being on this board. So once we had those people on the board, we got everyone in the room together. We went over what the bylaws of a cooperative look like, what the job of the board would be, how membership and shares and investment shares work, and the different options we had. And we set it all up. And now we are incorporated, we have a bank account, and we're starting to collect those investment shares. So we are in the very early stages, and the stage we're at now is our board members have put in their investment shares, and we are now just collecting quotes on the basics of getting that building up and operational again. So we had some asbestos testing done and some mold testing just to make sure. We have electricians, plumbers, and carpenters coming to give us some base estimations on what that would be to retrofit that building. And after we know that, we will be canvassing our community more for investment shares and explaining about how an investment co-op works. But our sales pitch is you can't rely on big company or corporations to come in and invest in your community if you won't invest in yourself. And so we want this to be a model for our community to say, look, us local people and residents are investing in development of this, and you could be a part of it too and join in. And that's what we're hoping happens. And so that's kind of where our project is at, and happy to answer questions later on. And I guess we are hopeful that once this is operational, we can take on other projects in the community and keep that ball rolling. We also have engaged some of our local businesses who might be interested in investing as well. So it takes a little bit of, we're hoping will be larger investors, and we'll take some of the onus off of getting multiple smaller investors. So that's a nice avenue that has come about from this process.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Lindsay. It's great to hear an update on what the Gull Lake Development Cooperative is doing, and hearing where they're at right now. It's exciting to see that the work you're moving towards and seeing what your group is doing, being very intentional. So it's great to see. Next up, we have Wendy O'Connor from the Sooke Community Investment Cooperative. Thank you for joining us, Wendy. You started muted.
Can you hear me now? Okay. My pleasure to be here. Lindsay, that was really inspiring. And I certainly wish you and your co-op the best of luck. So for us, we had no clue what we were doing, no real forethought in what was going to happen. We were dedicated coffee drinkers that had a space in our town that was special, almost sacred to so many people. It was that third space, not home, not work, but it was where you connected with the community. The Stick in the Mud had been in business for 16 years. So we were fortunate in that we didn't have to start from scratch. We were purchasing a business that was well established. And we didn't realize that, the past owner really wanted to move on with his life. And we had heard that it was up for sale, but there weren't any for sale signs, big for sale signs in our faces. And none of us could afford to buy a coffee shop. So it wasn't forefront in our minds at all. And on the 15th of April last year, David announced publicly that the coffee shop was closing on the 23rd of July. And we just couldn't let that happen. And, we joke about it now. There were 3 of us that were sitting in the coffee shop at that time, friends that just used to meet there on a regular basis. And the joke became, what happens when you have a retired farmer, a retired stonemason, and a musician sitting in a coffee bar, in a bar, coffee bar that's going to close. And Bernie, our retired farmer, originally from Alberta, was so gung-ho on cooperatives, and he thought this was the way that we could go. So we decided to give it a try to see if that would work. We called a public meeting with 4 days notice on a weekday at 6:30 in the evening, just advertised through social media. And probably close to 50 people showed up at that meeting. And it looked like this was a viable option. People wanted to pursue the idea of a cooperative to purchase the coffee shop. So we formed a steering committee. I think there was about 6 of us at the beginning, and started research on the internet and reaching out to different places and different people. Originally, we were looking at a small cooperative coach in Vancouver. We just couldn't afford the fee for that. And our municipality had just hired a new economic development officer. And she heard what we were doing, and she contacted us and said, "Have you heard about cooperatives first? You need to speak with them." And we did. And that was the start of an amazing relationship that is still going on today. We could not have done this without their help at all. And they're still, we know that I can reach out. They're just a phone call away. Getting the funds. That was interesting. And our town, unfortunately, likes to do things the hard way. You know, we had really hoped to have some angel investors step in. Nope, $500 shares, one at a time. And it was the warmth of the community stepping up for that. It was the emails coming in, the young mother, single mother who had just moved to Sooke and had done her research before moving. And she said, there were 3 things I needed in my community. I needed to have a good library, I needed to have a good rec center with swimming pool, and I needed a good coffee shop. And here's my $500 to make that happen. It was the 87-year-old who goes there on a regular basis, who the night before the coffee shop closed, showed up at one of the steering committee members' homes at 9:30 at night and said, "Here's $2,000 because this place has to stay open." That's what kept us inspired. And there were so many stories like that. 2 of the members on the steering committee, they set up a table at the coffee shop, and they manned that table for 3, 4, 5 hours a day for 8 weeks, haranguing people as soon as they came in. Do you know the coffee shop is closing? Are you interested in creating a cooperative? Yeah, so many amazing people have been involved in this. And it has been terrifying. And it has all happened so fast. Like I said, we heard the news on the 15th of April last year that the coffee shop was closing. On the 19th of June, we received our incorporation documents as a cooperative. As for us being an investment cooperative, that was kind of a fluke, actually. We didn't really know what investment cooperatives were. And the name we had tried to get was already taken. So one of the staff at Cooperatives First had suggested that perhaps this would be a good name for us, the Sooke Community Investment Cooperative. And we ran with it, even though all we wanted to do was ensure that the coffee shop stayed open. It really came down to the wire. The coffee shop did close. We did not come to an agreement with the vendor until the 4th of September. We finally signed all the paperwork, and we reopened the coffee shop on the 18th of September. So less than 5 months from hearing that it was closing to creating a steering committee to creating a cooperative and everything else that went into it. It is the lifeblood of our community. It is where all of the nonprofits meet. It's where business gets done. And I can't imagine, our town without this place. And so many other people feel the same way too. Are we going to go on to other projects? I think the fact that when we realized that this was an investment cooperative, it planted the seed there. And yes, there are other things we want for our community. I think we have to make sure that this first business flourishes, and probably that we can hopefully pay back some of the investors and gain the trust of the community that we can go on to do other projects. For the moment, I think what we are trying to do is hold space for the other possibilities in the future for this cooperative.
Awesome. Thank you for thank you for sharing your story about your co-op, Wendy. I think folks in the chat have also recognized that it was a lovely sentiment you shared about the community buy-in and getting community members to want to be a part of it, because there's that tie to it. And being able to buy in at any kind of amount, well, not any kind of amount, but at set shares and a set amount, it really makes it accessible for community members to get on board with this for as little as, whatever it's set at. So it's a really good model to really get that community buy-in. And so thank you for sharing, Lindsay, as well. We've gotten tons of questions in the chat already. This is great. I'm going to start off our Q&A session now. And I've got a few questions to get things started, and then we'll start getting to folks' questions in the chat. So one of the big questions that I'm curious about, and you've both kind of mentioned it a little bit first, but what were some of the challenges you encountered when informing an investment co-op? How did your group work to overcome them, or we're still working to overcome them? Please feel free to, Wendy, answer first. Oh.
So many challenges. Start with the fact that the board, the majority of the board is 65 years old. So we're looking at people that are technologically challenged, and we call ourselves Luddites. Trying to deal with banks and trying to find, I think probably the biggest challenge was how long it takes nowadays to do business anywhere, like trying to deal with a lawyer, set up appointments. Everything seems to take, weeks for people to return calls. It takes weeks, sometimes months, to book appointments with accountants, with lawyers. Another challenge is trying to find accountants and lawyers that are conversant with cooperatives. That's one of the challenges. How about you, Lindsay?
Yeah, luckily we have those challenges as well, and luckily we have our local municipality on board. So the town of Gull has been in support of this because they have recognized it's their building that we're focusing on, and they recognize the need to increase retail space and short-term rentals. So they've allowed me to do that as part of their contract with me. And so we have me kind of pushing forward and organizing lots of that. So that has been a help. As well as basically just education has been the most difficult. And lots of the people I'm working with are entrepreneurs and they are very busy. So often I'm not hosting meetings, I'm calling each of them and explaining updates and talking to them about it and getting their concerns and voicing it to the rest of the group. And so that's kind of been one of the challenges. And once we get this off and running, it is going to be a challenge to educate the community on how it's going to work and the involvement. I also foresee a challenge being the fact that this isn't really an investment that you're going to get. Well, it might be an investment that you get rich off of, but it's more of a good faith investment that shows you have interest in your community you probably won't lose money, but you might not make a whole bunch of money very quickly. So I see that being a challenge in getting more investors as we go along with our project.
Great. Thank you for sharing those, of course. And I think groups, you know, that are kind of in this area all approach similar issues at one point or another throughout, you know, starting that co-op, getting incorporated, and then start operating, things to kind of navigate and work with. I will mention that, you know, Cooperatives First, we do kind of help with providing some help and direction in some of that messaging, and we can also recommend not some groups, but some accountants or lawyers that are familiar with cooperatives that might be able to work with each group should they need. So just one thing to kind of note for your groups, as well as for anyone who may be interested in starting a co-op in the group here. I do have another question here. I think it's a great question, and something I think folks would really be interested in hearing. But what's a piece of advice you'd give to another town that's facing the same challenge you are, or even something you'd like to share with a community that is starting an investment co-op?
Don't be afraid to jump in.
I can go first if you want, Wendy, this time. I'm just reading it. I think, well, I'm to a fault a bit of an optimist, and I can think very creatively. So I think just having multiple conversations and not letting the people who don't think on that line, so the people who automatically say tear the building down, or our town's dying, or, you know, all the classic negative phrases we all hear, I'm sure, but to just continue those conversations and give people examples and talk to them about the opportunity you could bring if you took the initiative to do something um, like a project like we're both speaking about. And my other advice is that we've done other projects in this community where it wasn't as formal as a cooperative, but where we took a building and we used some volunteers to clean it up and, you know, give it a bit of life, and we used it as a business space to sell handmade goods. And just giving people the vision and a little bit of an idea can lead them in the right direction and fill that space with a new business. So that's, if we can get this building into and show the path of a new business in this community, or a new space that could be utilized, we are in the mindset that can bring more business to our community. So that's my advice, is just kind of, it is a big undertaking, but hopefully it can show the path for some other entrepreneur that can take it on, so you can move on past that. Sorry if that was jumbled, but that's kind of my advice, I would say. And just having lots of conversations with various leaders in your community, and, you know, the bigger businesses in your community that might, instead of donating to 100 different fundraisers, they might want to explore the option of investing in an initiative like this, that their money can be held until they're ready to take it back. So definitely engage with those bigger businesses.
So for me, I would also say that don't be afraid to jump in and start something like this. I often feel way over my head with a lot of this. I don't have an MBA. We don't have a chartered accountant who's on our board. But all it takes is passion, someone with passion, a few people with passion, and a community behind you. And within that community, there are bound to be people that have the skills and talents that we need. And we hope that they will step forward. We are coming up to our first AGM, and I've never been a president before. I've never run board meetings. I'm kind of a pitter patter, let's get at her kind of gal. You know, I'm not much for Robert's rules, of which I'm learning some of those things because I'm finding out that, yeah, to properly run a meeting, you do need that to have some of those skills. And we just sent out the notice for our upcoming AGM, and I am so thrilled that nominations are coming in and for people who want to be on the board and people with some amazing skills and talents. And it is so encouraging. So that would be one of my advice then to give.
That's great advice. And I think folks who are in this call or watch this webinar later on, I think they'll really understand what the groups are trying to do and the advice in moving forward and knowing where to start. I think it really, your sentiments really echo the fact that you don't have to be an expert. You just have to have the passion in the community, and you can dig in and you can get this done. So that's great. I'm going to lay off my questions. We're going to get to some of the questions in the chat here. First one that I see is from Dan, who's asking, Lindsay, what are the main purposes of the building once it is completed?
Yeah, so we identified we needed more retail space in the community of Gull and the short-term accommodations. So our feasibility study was based around that. So the main level of the building is quite huge. It's like 2,500 square feet just on the main level. So it would be professional or retail space. I talked a little about like a handmade shop we had created in the community, and that's something we might utilize that model just to get the space used and to have some rental income. And hopefully we can attract some more accounting businesses or healthcare professionals, etc. So we're starting with the main floor at this point, and if that goes really well, we want to move to the second level, and that would be short-term rentals because it's already kind of the layout is already apartment based, so that's kind of why we went that direction.
Awesome. Another question for you, Lindsay, is can you share, it's from Rob, can you share what the project's budget is if you've gone that far?
Yeah, so our feasibility study, we did a low end feasibility of what we could do on a low budget, fixing it up, to a high end budget, depending which kind of how much investment we got. The low end is about $300,000, and that's for the whole building. So what we're hoping is the main level. So yeah, please remember this is like a building that hasn't been used in 5 years. There's no power, there's no electrical hooked up. We got some work to do for us. But we're hoping to raise about 150 to 200,000 in our first phase just to get the main floor heating and plumbing and electrical done. And if things go well, we want to keep raising so that we can do the upper level to have those short-term accommodations. So that's kind of our budget, but we're getting quotes for just the main floor, electrical, plumbing, etc., so that we have a good idea of what we're going to campaign for off the start when we kick off our main engagement campaign.
It's exciting.
And that, yeah, sorry, Ryley, I'll just say like that feasibility study we did identified all of that through that. So they did the high end budget, the low end budget, what short-term rental rates are in the area, how much we could make a month if we, do a medium amount of usage. And then also with the retail and professional space rental, they did it's all laid out in a really nice document that shows that story of what the revenue could be and what the expenses could be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's great. Sorry for interrupting if I did. But
Okay.
we have another question from Terry, whose main concern is determining economic viability and wants to know, does Cooperatives First have guidelines for assessing market viability? We do. We have an online resource called the Biz Plan Generator. It helps walk groups through creating a business plan. Some of the features within it will help really identify and tease out those things. Additionally, if you're interested in starting a co-op, an investment co-op, we can work with you to kind of have those early on conversations. More so helping you to determine, the structure of funding and what have you. And then as the group moves forward through incorporation and after incorporation, we do offer also business coaching support from our entrepreneur in residence, and as well as, local consultants that can work with groups on a case-by-case instance to help identify, market research and these kinds of things as well. Lindsay kind of mentioned it, that their group did work with our business coaching support, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wendy, but your group also did they benefit from our business coaching a little bit as well?
A little bit,
Hmm.
but because it was already a business that we were purchasing, we didn't really have to worry about putting together a business plan.
Mhm. Okay. That I was sure there was a little bit of supports, but I just wanted to double check, and I didn't want to make a big claim. But yeah, we do have those kind of supports, and it all depends on what the group's looking to do and what we're working with. But we can have those conversations if a group's interested in such a thing. This
I was
question.
just I was just going to add, Riley, while we're talking about it, someone else just asked about a grant for the feasibility study, and it was actually a service offered through cooperatives first, so we didn't have to supply funding for that.
Yeah. One thing I will also mention, for the most part, all of our services are free too. So kind of work in the terms of, funding for those kinds of things. I did mention it's on a case by case instance, acknowledging what each group's doing. We will work through to make sure the group does feel set up. And so providing these free supports is something we can do when the group is ready for those kinds of things. We do have a question for Wendy. Cheryl's asking, are there any other restaurants in your community/area?
Yes, there are. There are 5 or 6 restaurants in Sooke, and a couple of other coffee shops as well.
Okay. Following it up once again with you here, Wendy. Gord's asking, was the Sooke Co-op able to raise enough money to purchase the business and also hire a manager? Or was cash flow upon opening enough to get things rolling with staffing?
We were able to come up with enough money to purchase the coffee shop outright, but not to cover the first 3 or 4 months of running it. So a couple of our members actually did some loans to us. We were fortunate that we did not have to do any bank loans, but we did finally secure a line of credit. We have 340 members in our cooperative, and it's $30 to purchase a membership. And I think we had 116 investors and 210 shares were sold. So
okay, we have a question that seems like it's more so aimed for us, is that, can this model work for equity-owned co-housing? We've seen this model used before to develop housing. I kind of mentioned them earlier. The Sangudo Opportunity Development Co-op created an investment co-op and they did many projects right off the start, but one of them was to build housing. And so what they did was they raised enough investment capital to essentially buy a plot of land, build a house on that, and then they eventually rented out first the housing and then sold the housing as well to locals to live within, to provide housing in their community, but to also a return on investment for its investors. So it was kind of a balance of both. In terms of equity-owned co-housing, it's an interesting conversation, and it really depends on in what jurisdiction. Housing co-ops are, it's different in each province, and so it's really kind of all depend on where you're located. But definitely a conversation that if you're interested in starting a for equity owned co-housing or an investment co-op cat, we can definitely have that conversation afterwards, for sure. we have a question from Stephanie, and she's wondering if you could clarify, Wendy, the difference between your membership fee versus your investment fee.
Well, all investors must be members. And $30 is the membership fee, and investments start at $500 for a share. And of course, the cooperative model is it doesn't matter how many shares you own, you still only have the vote of being one member. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. And I can kind of give a little clarity on that as well. A membership fee is a one-time fee. Community members, individuals can purchase to become a member of the co-op. So what that does is that gives you that ownership value within the co-op, that voting powers that allows you to vote on every matter within the co-op and have your voice expressed as an owner of the co-op. The investment fee in Wendy's case is it comes with the member fee. In order to become an investment member, you have to become a member. So you have to purchase your membership fee at $30 and then an additional at least one investment fee of $500 to become a member of an investment co-op. We've seen them in different amounts, and folks can also purchase more investment shares as well. But by purchasing an investment share, it doesn't give you that ownership say, that voting power within the co-op like a membership fee was. So one is purely based on pooling your capital. The investment share is pooling your capital and hopefully getting a return on investment. And that membership fee is giving you that ownership value within the co-op, that the ability to vote within the co-op. Just looking at more questions here.
I can just say that our membership is $1 and our investment share is 1,000. So just if people want to know the
and groups
of that.
Yeah, groups can do them differently as well. And it kind of all depends on what the group wants to do. I did get a question earlier in the day that asked, is there a reason shares are $500? Would it make more sense to sell at $100? And it really all depends on what your community can afford and what you think the buy-in will be. If you think $100 is more easily accessible for your investment shares for your community to buy in, you can definitely set it at 100. And folks who have the ability to invest more into the co-op can say, purchase 10 shares at $100 for 1,000, and you can have others purchase one share at $100, and that still makes you it still gives you an investment share. It just, when it comes to redeeming profits at the end of the year, or if the co-op is profitable, that amount that gets returned back to the investors is cut into how many investment shares are within the co-op. So that person who has 10 shares as opposed to one share will get 10 times more of the cut because they have 10 of investment shares as opposed to one. So really, it all depends on what you think is affordable, but can still raise capital for your co-op. And then another question I kind of had was, could you have a subscription type purchase where people buy a share a month? Typically, monthly subscriptions are more on the operational side of things, and the investment shares can be purchased in a period from X to Y, let's say from January to August as a call for investment shares. So it depends on the frequency. The frequency, if it's on a monthly basis, would more so be something operational for, like a food box or a subscription to a service, whereas an investment is purely about pooling that capital to start off. Just want to make sure I'm not missing any questions in the chat here. We have one for both Wendy and Lindsay. Do you have a timeline for paying back investments? This is a good question.
We did ask that our investors be patient investors, and that is absolutely the feedback that we're getting from everybody. We are hoping to pay dividends to our users, our members. So we track how much people are spending on a daily basis at the coffee shop, and they will receive we haven't yet determined what that will be, and it will depend on how much we're in the black. But it could be as simple as a gift certificate for them to use in the coffee shop. We had reached out to a workers' co-op in rural BC, and they said they had paid off their investors within 8 years. So that would absolutely be our goal. And if we could do it prior to that, fantastic.
Yeah, and our plan is when investors make their investment, we want them to give us at least 2 years. But for any investors, it's built into our bylaws. If they want their money to withdraw their money, they have to give a certain amount of notice. So we're hoping people are also patient investors, because it is a risk. We don't know if we're going to fill the spaces or not, but we believe in that process, and hopefully our municipality will keep working with us. So it's buys us a little bit of time to do that. And it's nice because we don't have to buy the building. The municipality is just going to turn it over to us eventually once we're set up. So it's a bit less risk, but yeah, ours, we're hoping give us at least 2 years.
Awesome. Yeah. And so just for the sake of time, I am just going to wrap this up with one last final question that we got. And in this case, it was, when it comes to working with investment cooperatives, do you need to hire a lawyer? And that's an interesting question, because when you offer investment shares, you are now offering public securities. And so when you enter in this realm, it is our advice that when you start offering securities and investment shares, to consult a lawyer and ask them questions about the local jurisdiction. I know Wendy and I were having a conversation earlier about it, about the landscape of issuing investment shares and securities in BC and how their group is navigating that. So upon incorporation, you'll have to declare as a provider of securities, public securities such as this, when you're an investment co-op. But this is something that we can work with the group to have that conversation and make them aware of before they even incorporate, so that they can kind of navigate and point them into service providers that can help assist with this. But yeah, I just want to close this off with having a big thank you to our panelists, Lindsay and Wendy. This was great. I think folks are going to take a lot from this, and it was just interesting to hear updates and myself even learn about 2 co-ops that we've worked with and are continuing to help. Thank you, of course, as well to everyone on the call for joining us today. We hope the webinar has provided you with insights and new ideas for tackling economic issues, supporting businesses. If you're interested in starting an investment co-op or learning more cooperatives first can help, reach out to myself or anyone on our team, and we can kind of start that conversation and help folks navigate this. I'm going to put my email into the chat here before we end today's session, just for everyone to have access to. And then if you want to reach out with any questions, feel free to reach out, and we can definitely have that conversation and help point folks into the right directions. But thank you once again for everyone joining. Wendy.
I'm too technologically challenged to answer to type at the same time as being on this. And I think I saw a few people asking if they could have a conversation offline. Is there any way to access the chat once the Zoom call is finished?
I do believe we have the continuous chat going. So I will have access to the folks asking that question, and then I can get them in contact with you as well, Wendy or Lindsay, for whoever wants to reach out and have that conversation as well, if folks are interested in.
Yeah,
Likewise,
I was just gonna say, Ryley, if anyone contacts you and wants to reach out with me, just give them my email. I'm happy with that.
Yep. That's where I was gonna go as well, is just reach out to me. My email's now in the Zoom chat here. Please feel free to take that down. And if you want to have a conversation with Wendy or Lindsay, I'm more than happy to connect you with them. Or if you want to have a conversation with us, we're willing to have that conversation as well. Really here to help folks learn more about co-ops and start co-ops. So thank you once again to our panelists, to my colleague Jana for helping with the tech, and for all of you for joining today. I hope you all have a great rest of your Monday and a great start to your week. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.